We should be good to get started here. First and foremost, thank you everyone for joining us today. Happy holidays from everyone here at Charles IT and all of our partners here. First and foremost, just want to say cameras will be off for all attendees. The recording is on, and there will be a Q&A at the end of the session. So please feel free to submit any questions you have throughout the duration, and we'll stop a little bit early, get our experts here a chance to answer any questions you have. Without further ado, let me introduce who we have here. So on my far left here, we have Chris Poudret, Account Manager at Charles IT, Farah Selman, MSP Partner Manager for Duo and Cisco. I have Joanna Heisman virtually there, the Senior Vice President of Strategic Insights and Research at KnowBe4, and Anna Mumford, Cybersecurity Consultant with Constep. So I want to give these guys a little bit of a chance to introduce themselves. I'll start with Chris P over here. We'll move my way and then to the virtual guests here.
Yeah, so I'm Chris. Everyone here calls me Crispy because we have too many Chris's. I'm an account manager here working with clients to help strategize and plan for their future and account for all their IT needs.
Farah, go ahead.
Yep. So my name is Farah Salman. I am with Cisco, representing the Duo product line for our MSP partners in the Northeast and Canada region. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. Joanna, if you want to go next.
Hi, great. Thanks so much for having me. My name is Joanna Heisman. I'm with KnowBe4, and I have a really unique background in this space. So I was a practitioner in security awareness and training. I led ADP's Global Security Awareness and Training Program for about 55,000 people across 132 countries. And then I moved from there to Gartner. So I was a researcher in this space, and I led Gartner's research on security awareness and training for a period of 4 years. I wrote all the research, Magic Quadrants, market reports, talked to thousands of customers, and now I'm on the provider end. So I'm with the world's leading company in security awareness and training products. And so I'm certainly really happy to be here with all of you.
Nana?
Hi, hello everyone. Anna Mumford with Constep. Constep is the official Connecticut's MEP-centered and manufacturer extension partnership. We are part of a national network that is sponsored and facilitated by NIST. For the last 4 years, I have been working with small and medium manufacturers right here in Connecticut, helping them strengthen their cybersecurity defense, implement regulatory requirements such as the DFARS regulations, and now preparing for the CMMC. Fun fact about myself, I just completed a month ago my master's degree in cybersecurity management at Purdue University, and I'm still super excited about it.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for being here. We really appreciate all of your expertise joining us, especially on this holiday week. Just to jump right into it, we're talking about security culture today, building a security-centric company culture. And I wanted to talk about a little bit about what that means to each of you. And I know you all have a little bit of different backgrounds. So for each of you guys, you might have your own perspective on what a security culture really means and what it looks like. So I'll start with our own internal person. Chris, if you want to kick it off and tell us from the IT and cybersecurity side what that looks like to you and what we try to provide for our clients.
Yeah, so a security-centric culture really relies on a top-down approach. You know, we had all discussed this previously as we were getting ready from this webinar, and it requires total buy-in from everybody. Everybody needs to be aligned in protecting the company and just being mindful of all the possible vulnerabilities that might be out there. It really is a community effort.
And Joanna, I'll go to you next. I know this is a large part of what you do on a daily basis with KnowBe4. So talk a little bit about what you guys see it as and what is your approach to essentially getting that message across for building that security culture within organizations.
Sure. So KnowBe4, in about 2019, we had acquired the world's leading security culture research company. named Culture, CLTR, out of Norway. And so the security culture report that we author on an annual basis is the largest globally recognized research into security awareness, behavior, and culture that's currently available. Our report offers unique insights, which it allows an organization and its leaders to better understand how employees and how the audience within their organization views security. Leaders can also use this information to understand, what are the necessary investment dollars that we need to, anchor to a program like this to make sure that we are focused on what we know is the most critical element, which is that human layer. Right. And so we define security culture as the ideas, customs, and social behaviors of an organization that influence the organization's overall security. And so when you look at it, it's not something that, is led by human resources like an organizational culture, which focuses on the goals and the values, right? It's really, anchored around that, how do people within your organization, what are their attitudes about security culture look like? What are the norms? What's their cognition? What are their behaviors, right? And so what are those dimensions that help build a security culture within an organization that helps drive the readiness level of your employees up a level so that they are focused on not only protecting the organization, but being able to detect and report instances should they arise.
And Farah, I'll go to you next from the Duo and Cisco perspective a little bit.
Yeah, so when I think of security culture, I think about taking a proactive and preventative approach to security and keeping security hygiene really top of mind. And so from a solution perspective like MFA, I think it's really important to acknowledge that the use of MFA widespread for end users hasn't always been the norm. If we look back as soon as 4 or 5 years ago, that 2019 time span, there was only a small percentage of end users that worked remotely. And between 2019 and 2021, that almost tripled. And so what you saw within IT environments was the perimeter start to expand. And so your data and applications were not just available on-prem, they were also available in the cloud. And your end users were accessing that data and applications from more devices, BYOD, devices that were corporate issued, and those devices within your office space. And attackers use the expansion of that perimeter to gain access to data and applications via compromised passwords and devices, the low-hanging fruit. So although it wasn't necessarily the norm 4 or 5 years ago, it is really important to utilize those security tools and tell that security story to your end users and why it's important. So really taking a proactive approach and utilizing those security tools as the norm for your end users is security culture to me.
Great. And last but certainly not least, Anna.
So yes, I agree with all that have been already stated in here. Perhaps what I can add to it is that, as I work with my clients, with lots of manufacturers, the component, the security culture, the resiliency, it's actually quite challenging for lots of companies to implement. It's something that they do struggle. I see it all the time. But it really starts with their employees, as it's been mentioned already, is that the human factor, the human error, it's a significant risk to any organization. And to be able to, really the best protection method is to building the cybersecurity culture within the organization, which again, it's not an easy feat for a lot of companies, because the goal in here is to change the employees' behavior, the practice, the mindsets of the employees. And that takes combinations of, several key components, such as comprehensive employee training, the leadership commitment to support cybersecurity initiatives, effective change management, That one it's a big one. I see many companies are also failing in that one, and just ongoing risk management, paying attention of what's going on, and adapt the training and the message within the organization based on the risks and the threats that they find over there.
Great, I appreciate that. And then moving into something that you just mentioned and something that Chris mentioned originally when he was introducing what he thought security culture was, and I think a huge part of this is the executive leadership and support. So I don't know if you wanted to add a little bit to that, Chris, and talk a little bit about what that means to you and what the best practices are, because obviously you said top down, and I think realistically, that's exactly what it is, because if your leadership isn't going to be pushing it or following it, then why would anybody else follow it? So,
yeah, it definitely has to be equitable. What's being applied to, the standard employee at a company, same thing needs to be held. That standard needs to be held to the CEO. So, the phrase that you used is telling that story of why they need it. We don't want to use just straight negativity to get the point across, but explaining what could potentially happen to their company if they are not protected, if they are not mindful, if they don't have security forward thinking, it could very well negatively affect their company. And getting them to understand that and be excited about it and present that to their employees of, this is why we're doing it. We're all in it together. Nobody's going to get in trouble for saying, hey, I clicked on something. It's a very open and honest conversation that you have with everyone. Everyone is involved.
So yeah, I'm curious to see, and maybe Joanna, I'll go back to you for this one. Maybe like what you might say to an executive for someone's company who says, I have security services in place. I've done my due diligence with the IT and cybersecurity portion of it. Why does it matter if I'm training my employees? Shouldn't this just be locking everything up? Shouldn't I be set to go here? So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you can train and test and communicate, until the sun goes down. However, if it's not ingrained within the fiber of your organization, within the fabric of it from day one, when your employees are hired into the organization, then there's a missing step there, right? And so in order to drive a more security aware culture, there's lots of things that executives need to do, right? So first and foremost, they need to role model, right? They're not above what everybody else is asked to do. So they need to conduct, the training. They need to participate in the testing, and their results need to be, shared across the board like everybody else's are. And I like what you also said. I mean, this isn't something that is, and I think Chris, you said this, right? These aren't gotcha exercises. This isn't fear for fun, right? And so this is driving a learning to strengthen the security within the organization, right? And so a lot of companies, especially when I was at Gartner, and I did a lot of research on this topic there and wrote papers about the consequences and the rewards tied to being more secure. And some companies are rolling out rewards. They're rewarding their team for more secure behavior, giving them increments of time off, points in company stores, whatever it is. But on the flip side, you can't have rewards without having a balance of consequence. So they're also showing their employees that, listen, if you are among that percentage of people along a general bell curve, that 20% that just aren't going to do anything correct, no matter how much you're trained or tested, that there are consequences involved in that, and those consequences could be tied to termination based on the the risk associated with your role. Right. And it does come to that. And I know lots of companies, large and small, that have certainly rolled that out. And I think the other thing is that, you can't just look at your security department or your IT department to lead this charge. Right. And so as an executive within the organization, you need to set up a network across your audience, right? And so a champion network, people who aren't necessarily security experts, but who have a passion for security or are security advocates or influencers that can help reinforce messaging at their local office or within their department, right? And so the more you have people pushing in the same direction, the more powerful it's going to be and the more it's going to take hold for a longer period of time.
Definitely. And I know for me personally, we do have the simulated phishing trials, and those go out to us, I don't know, maybe once every few weeks or something like that. And there was one time that the guy at our organization who runs that showed me my actual like phish prone percentage. And that enough for me is like motivation, you know, keep an eye out for this stuff, because I was at, I don't know, I was below 1%. And for me, it's like, you know, it's something to be proud of for myself. And it's like something that I can keep pushing towards and getting as low as possible or whatever. So I really like the idea of building that culture out and like maybe even showing people that, like, listen, your phish prone percentage is a little bit higher than our average. Here's what you can do to help drop that down, all that kind of stuff there. So I do like that. But hey, for me, that's enough motivation, is seeing that super low percentage, trying to keep it low, and you know, doing everything that I can in my small role to help out the company and protecting it.
And I'll tell you, I mean, KnowBe4's dashboard and our products certainly give you the capabilities to be able to provide that information, you know, to that employee level. And I think that's great. But I think one of the things that companies need to be, need to understand when it comes to the testing component is that, you know, this isn't something that you do on an annual basis or a quarterly basis, right? If you're doing that, you're wasting your time and money, right? In order to test your employees, it needs to be a minimum of once a month is the recommended, right? So one phishing test a month. For your high-risk populations, more than that, because you need enough instances across a 12-month period of time, but enough instances of the same kind of template. So whether it's, you know, simple or moderate or more challenging, you need 3 or 4 of each to be able to understand, is my population testing at a low percentage for the, you know, easy ones, and do I need to focus someplace else? Is this department testing one way? Do I need to focus, right? So it gives you a lot more personalization to the program. And I'll tell you, at KnowBe4, like, listen, I could be phished 5 times in one day. It has happened. Right. And, you know, it's interesting in our environment because, you know, people in the beginning would say, you know, doesn't that take up a lot of time? Isn't it, you know, doesn't it, remove you from your work or your concentration on what you're doing or whatever it is? And so in the beginning, yeah, maybe it took an extra 15, 20 seconds to look through something and navigate through it. Now my instincts are so good at it that it takes me virtually seconds to be able to determine whether something is good, bad, or needs to be reported, right? And that's power, and that's practice. And what you're giving your people is an opportunity to practice. And with practice comes a level of skill that gets raised.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. And just moving forward, I wanted to, Anna, go to you and your experience with the manufacturers. I know that manufacturers are historically a lot more compliant than a lot of other industries, or are up there with some of those top compliant industries. So I'm curious what your experiences have been in training and building those cultures within the manufacturing environments.
Yes, well, they are more secure perhaps, but they are still just became the #1 attack vector, the manufacturing industry. So there is definitely a lot of risk, especially with the small, medium manufacturers where they are just too busy. They, you know, with the day-to-day activities of running a business, especially those organizations here in Connecticut, we have plenty of manufacturers that are family-owned. You know, they don't understand security. So there's a big challenge in there. And when I come to, you know, clients, start working with clients, it makes, just from my experience working with dozens and dozens of manufacturers over the years, it makes a huge difference when the executive team is involved. It's committed. It's they communicating their commitment to cybersecurity to their employees and lead by example. So it's very important that the leadership team go through a cultural and philosophical change to build the cybersecurity culture within their organization, and just permit that culture through the whole company. So they need to create an environment of employee engagement and collaboration. We want to make sure that we create an environment that where everybody is informed. They know what are the risks to their environment, their specific companies, and know how to respond to it and how to report those risks. The devil is in the details. It usually takes a very clear explanation. It's very clear to their employees what they need to do and how to report that. And we need to make sure that everybody understands that they play an important part in defending and protecting their companies. And so when I actually just want to share with you, there are some pitfalls, some things that I see all the times in companies where the leadership teams kind of falls into that, which is very unfortunate. But I go to sometimes a company and they treat cybersecurity as a project that has a start date and end date, and unfortunately, I see it all the time. And they need to understand that this is an ongoing initiative. They need to be aware of their risks, continually learn and evolve and protect their company, right? Yes, we talked about insufficient employee training, making sure that the training is being performed, but it goes much farther than just phishing emails and just maybe a general cybersecurity awareness training, because when it comes to, and that's also in a lot of the regulations, requirements, the frameworks that is built in, that there is the physical security training, insider threat, which is huge, because actually it's more out there than you would think. There's also the policies and procedures that they need to establish within their organization, that they need to train their employees on that. There's the incident response and again, reporting to it, resiliency plan training, training of their employees with like a security role-based roles. There's also any specific training that needs to be done for specific industry regulations and requirements, which that also has their own requirements when it comes to training their employees. So again, it's some of the other things is maybe ineffective change management when they training, a lot of the policy procedures required changing or maybe implementing new business processes. So making sure that is the changes in management are effective. It's super important as well. And then, I see a lot of those companies are still thinking about cybersecurity in terms of technology. And as we know, it's much, much more to it. And training, implementing cybersecurity culture, it's so much, a big part of that. So it's a lot of times it's just changing their mindset. It's very important, meaning that it's a holistic approach. It's not just implementing an IT solution.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with that. And obviously we see that there's a lot that goes into it. It's not just a cut and dry thing of here's a plan for security culture within your organization. Now go execute on it. It's time consuming, like you said, Joanna. It's repetition. It's learning how to recognize these things. And moving from that, I do want to talk a little bit about how to align that with a company's overall goals and plans. And I know, Chris, like you working as an account manager at Charles IT, you see that here's this roadmap, like you're building these roadmaps for these organizations that are trying to implement these necessary services. And I'm curious as to what you see, I don't know, is there any trends you see in terms of implementing that security awareness training, or getting buy-in from those main point of contacts that you talk to, or anything like that?
Yeah, a lot of it is, we've worked closely with KnowBe4 and with Duo. We have a good idea of what are best practices why do we do them, and what are the benefits?
Mhm.
You know, I know Joanna had mentioned earlier that, you know, yes, you might get a number of emails. You know, we like to use a biweekly as our baseline.
Mhm.
People are getting that repetition. But even if you were to think that they take 1 minute, 26 times throughout the year, if it's bi-weekly, take 1 minute each, that's 26 minutes. If somebody were to click on a link or open up an attachment and their account is compromised, it's going to be more than 26 minutes to remediate that. There is very much a value in training people, but being able to explain to them the benefits, not just the requirements of, you know, hey, federal regulation says you have to do this, but this is why it's also important and how it will help you, protect you, and in a lot of ways be a value add is usually how I try and present it to get their buy-in, and my clients generally see a lot of value in it.
Yeah, and in terms of, you know, fitting that into the company's overall goals, I don't know if anyone wants to pick this up. I'll open up the floor here, but has anyone seen anything about, I don't know, the best ways to implement it into somebody's goals or try to maybe transform it into becoming a goal of the executive leadership of a company?
I'll jump in here.
Go ahead,
just
Anna, yeah.
very quickly. So any cybersecurity program needs to align with the company's overall strategic goals and in business terms. So it also needs to be a top-down business approach. I believe that Joanna maybe or have already mentioned that. It needs to follow the company's missions, the guidelines. And let me give you an example of that. So I'm working currently with some companies. They are implementing cybersecurity with the goal of preparing for growth. So they currently, for instance, are not doing any business with the DoD, Department of Defense, but they are hoping, they're working right now, they have an initiative to implement the DFARS regulation in hopes that once the CMMC is going to be here, they're going to be in such a position to grow their business within, you know, getting DoD contracts and growing in that industry. Another example, you know, might be to really structure the program to protect their competitive advantage, especially when it comes to the technology and intellectual property. You want to make sure that you create a profile, a security profile that is risk-based, meaning that you need to understand what are your critical assets, and based on create a program based on protecting those critical assets. So if you need to protect the confidentiality of data or maybe availability, you know, whatever that may be, you need to structure that program within that, with that in mind. And then again, adapting the right cybersecurity frameworks, with implementing the right controls, and then again, it's the top-down business approach. It's really key in here.
The only thing unique that I would add to that, because I think Anna did a great job in providing some really good detail, is, you know, companies make a mistake when they try to set up the goals surrounding their security awareness program. In other words, they're not linking it to the core values and goals of the organization, right? And so unless the organization is focused on that as one of their top 2 or 3 goals or initiative, and unless the program is tied to that, it's not going to get any attention, right? And so unless you're, you know, specifically making that connection for the executives to see, you know, you really can't sit back and say, you know, why aren't I getting the investment dollars, or why aren't I getting the support? Well, you know, it has to be part of what's driving the overall business forward.
Absolutely. And I think another main part of that is maybe moving away directly from the trainings and from the mindset of having a security culture. I think another huge part of it that we've seen on our end is making everything. What's the saying you always say? Security is inherently
inconvenient.
Inherently inconvenient. So I mean, and we've talked a lot about that in preparation for this webinar. And I think one of those main things is application wise, and I'm going to go to you, Farah, for this because this is exactly what Duo does. But I think making everything one cohesive integration, for lack of a better term, and maybe you can describe this better than I can, but I think that's a huge part of it as well, and getting buy-in from everybody who works for the company, and making things easier for them. So why don't you talk a little bit about that and what you see there?
Yeah, I think it's a really important point that we want to look at using solutions that are easy for the end user. And so when we use a solution like Duo MFA, you're using a solution that spans many applications. It's protecting your local logons, your remote connections, VPN, your web applications with one solution, instead of having your end user having to use 4 or 5 different solutions, and some of those don't have a backup. So when you get a new phone, downloading all those apps, ensuring that you can actually log into them, it becomes a bit of a nightmare and creates a lot of end user friction. And so Duo was created, and it was a standalone company before it was acquired by Cisco, as a solution that had the end user at the forefront. So MFA, that was easy for end users. We have the push notification, so the end user doesn't have to type in a 6-digit code with SMS. So really, we're taking a solution and saying, how do we make it really robust on the security front, but also easy for the end user to utilize on a daily basis? We don't want solutions that end users are going to try to somehow bypass or get away from actually utilizing it.
Great. And I don't know if any of you guys, maybe Joanna, if you've seen any correlation with that and maybe your research on what that security culture takes, if that is something that helps in that sense, is making things a little bit easier for the end users and just essentially making it easier for them to protect themselves and the company data.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's all about getting the engagement necessary for them to learn, right? And so how do people get better? They learn to get better, right? They observe. And so, when you're looking at constructing a program that will help you lead through that growth and that learning, you need to work with an organization that provides lots of different kinds of engaging content in different varieties and different styles, right? And so a one-size-fits-all approach to learning kind of is long gone. And I think Anna would agree with me there, right? And you need to look at your organization and say, what are the learning styles of the people that are in my audience, and then match that training to their learning style, right? And so if you're going to train your population on passwords, right? I mean, the IT department might intake content better in the form of a game, while the sales organization might intake content in the form of a short video or something, right? So I think that's kind of the one piece, is really mapping that content more towards the human that's receiving it. I think the other thing is that you need to look at really increasing the frequency of the training, but decreasing the time that people spend in training, right? And so long gone are the I'm going to do an hour and a half training module or whatever it is. I mean, people just don't learn that way anymore, right? And so if you're going to train on passwords, say the month of December, look at the content that your provider, it has for you and say, can I, over the course of this, the next 30 days, instead of giving them an hour module, can I break it up into a short video, something that's text-based, a little something that's more engaging, something that's gamified, right? And give them opportunities during the course of the month to really improve their knowledge. That's how people learn. Smaller chunks, more frequent time, more frequency invested in their learning.
I can just add to it. I'm gonna give you an example, because I still I 100% agree with all that Joanna said. Just maybe to add to it is an organization, the leadership, as they are working under cybersecurity compliance or implementing cybersecurity framework. Again, be aware of the risks, and the risks might be in the training. Be aware. And I'm going to give you an example. I just recently I was working with a client that had an employee, an engineer that was, for the last 20 years, they were bringing home with them an USB because they like to do additional work on the weekend under, right? Huge risk, as we all know. So again, risk area for the company, they need to be aware of that. They need to take, without be able to provide the functionality and able to work for that employee on a weekend. Let's look at other ways what we can do to minimize the risk and still make sure that the employee still is able to do what they like to do, what makes them efficient. So again, leadership involvement is super important in here, looking at the risk areas, but also being able to communicate to their employees of why we're doing that. Because again, they were afraid of making that employee uncomfortable or upsetting that employee. So we need to make sure that we as a leadership explain to everyone, make very clear what is the strategy, overall strategy? Why are we doing that? What is the potential risk of not, them performing those procedures or taking that training or following actually the training, right? They need to understand the direction and the strategy of company and maybe explain, now we are at this point those are our initiatives for this year. Where we want to be, it's in 2 years, 3 years, be compliant with that one. There is still a long way to get there, but those are the steps we need you to take, and that's why we're doing that. Usually that explanation makes a huge difference for organization. And I've actually been in trainings, participated in trainings for employees that was done on site, person to person, where afterwards the employees are very positive about cybersecurity. They actually will come to you and brag about that. Hey, I did see that email, and I knew it, and I did not click on it. And as a matter of fact, they're gonna police each other. They're gonna be, they find a USB somewhere that is not marked, that is company-owned, company issues, and they're gonna come to you and report things to you, right? So this is the part of the building of the culture. It's really wonderful when you to see that when it's happening, because your employees want to do the right thing. So you want to make sure you provide them with the tools, with the right training to empower them to be, positive and know what to do and how to report the things.
Anna, that brings something up too that I was thinking about. I think we talked about it last time, and it was, when you fish people and when they're participating in something like that, you want to make sure that they're kind of going through the right processes so that it can be reflected in your phishing percentages and your click rates and all of that. But some really good behavior is if you get a phishing test or, something that's real, and, you would stand up and you would, I would tell Anna over the cubicle wall, hey, don't click that. Now, that frustrates people who are in charge of these programs because it does mess with really, really good behavior. You want to see that happen,
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That's why the communication and transparency is so huge there, and whether that's being announced in company meetings or annual company presentations, quarterly company presentations, whatever the case may be. But I think it's super important to get that point across.
Can I just,
yes,
to Joanna's point, that event has happened here on multiple occasions where clients who don't have Duo, don't have MFA set up, they might have their email compromised, and bad actors will get in, they'll just spam out emails to everyone in their contact list, and a bunch of us at Charles IT are on their contact list. So all of a sudden, all of us get the same email, and we all kind of stand up and carry dog, and we're like, "Did you get that? You get that? Okay, yep, we got to submit a ticket and call that guy right now." And it gets the ball rolling. It's not just people being like, "Oh, that's funny that he got compromised." Keep going with their day. Everybody immediately notifies everyone. Make sure that we get a hold of that person and get that issue remediated.
Yep.
I'm gonna just give you another example. About a year ago, so one of our coworkers shared with us that, as he was going through his email, he clicked on something, and as he clicked on it, he realized, oops, I maybe shouldn't have clicked on it, right? And he panicked and he closed his laptop thinking it's gonna go away. Unfortunately, that's too late, right? So we want to make sure that as we're training our employees, as we communicate to them, it's important to make sure that they feel comfortable reporting things like that to the whoever it's managing the designated employees within the organization, because you want to stay on top of that. You do not want your employees to feel uncomfortable thinking that there might be some negative repercussions if they report. Again, you want to make sure that this is clearly communicated to the employees.
And one, yes, I love that, because trust is the foundation to all of this. If you don't have that, nothing else in the company, never mind just cybersecurity, but nothing else is gonna to gel. You had spoken before about communicating with the employees, especially with somebody who likes to, bring their work home with them, which, is more, they're happy to do that. I don't see a company having a problem with that. But, we always say here, it's solutions, not problems. So that person is bringing home all their work on unsecured USB. We don't like that. It's not safe. But instead of just telling them, no, you can't do that, finding a solution that works. Do we need to get them a company, device to bring home? Do we give them remote access into their computer through a secure platform? Coming up with innovative, unique ways of letting them do the work while still keeping us in a protected environment, and where appropriate, if you have compliances that are even more restricted than that, but being willing to, yes, we have best practices and we have policies, but how can we adapt these things to make it so that people can be effective and efficient and do the work in the way that they feel comfortable? So I just wanted to bring that up because that's something we feel very strongly about. We're always using that phrase, solutions, not problems. Don't just tell me I can't.
But I think you also bring up something else very interesting, and that's, people take their work home, right? And so, everything that we're teaching employees about being more secure in the workplace is 100% transferable to your personal lives, right? You're not going to sit around the table and talk about new features and functions of Salesforce.com, right? Like, your kids don't care. However, by talking to them about being more safe online, or what sites to avoid, or, talk to your younger kids about, not giving too much information online, or posting pictures, or the fact that nothing goes away anymore, right? And these conversations are really important to have. And, the knowledge that you're investing in your people, they then in turn can make their friends, family, and loved ones more secure, which is, right, that's the heart of it.
Absolutely.
No, and what I would add to that is, when you're having that conversation, I think it's important to acknowledge that there are more security trainings and solutions in place more than ever. And so is it because of the end user or the environment that we find ourselves in? I really think it's the environment that we find ourselves in. The cyber attacks have become more sophisticated than ever. You have social engineering, you have things like credential stuffing. They have HAS, hacking as a service. Like, it's become very automated, very sophisticated process to infiltrate these networks. And so because of those threats increasing, we do have to put more on the end user. And I think it's important to acknowledge that it's not that we don't think the end user is as savvy as they were maybe 10 and 20 years ago. It's that the environment is really changing, and we have to adapt to that as well.
Absolutely. And, people may see it as like, oh, they don't trust me. They don't trust me. The truth is, what we say around here is, you're only as strong as your weakest link, so making it more about the environment. You're right. Like, the world that we're living in, I think, is important to kind of get people on board. And it's like, hey, we don't not trust you. It's just, there's different things coming out here. There's different threats that are out here right now. And so making it more about that, I totally agree with your point.
And that's why we don't just do a one-time, 1 hour, 90-minute training.
Yeah.
We're doing the training, and clients will ask me, well, our guys did the training this year. Doesn't that mean we're good? I was like, maybe 20 years ago that worked, but there's something new coming out every day. And, the scam of the week emails that we get to let us know when some world conflict has, brought some new vulnerability or social engineering method in, keeping everybody up to date and doing it in bite-sized chunks so they don't feel overwhelmed. But they're long gone are the days of, yep, I took my annual training. All right, see you guys next year. Right, just not going to happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think another huge point to add to that is, you know, we're seeing the more sophisticated threats, like because of AI, machine learning, and like breaking down those language barriers. If someone is foreign to this environment and sending those phishing emails our way, or SMS, what is that, smishing they call that?
Yeah.
Smishing with SMS. So I think it's extremely important to get that most recent training, have that stuff top of mind. You know, yeah, AI is evolving. It's a great tool for everybody to use. But at the end of the day, other people are using it maliciously as well. And how is that happening? What can I look for now if this language barrier is broken? You used to be able to look for, oh, that word is spelled wrong, you know, that thing looks off because of this or whatever. But not anymore. It's breaking that down, building perfect emails, clickable emails, you know, it's getting a little bit scary. One last thing that I wanted to dive into real quick before we close it out for the Q&A. We have a couple more minutes before we can dive into that. So real briefly, and I'll open up the floor for this here. I want to talk a little bit about integrating the security into the onboarding, and then, like we were just talking about, the continued learning. Like for me, I came into Charles IT as a 20-year-old kid who knew nothing about the technical space whatsoever. And, you know, in my onboarding, it was like, I have to take these trainings like all the time. What is this for? And like, so, I mean, just talking a little bit about kind of branching off what we just talked about, but maybe some best practices in terms of that and helping people really like get the point of this and break it down. So if anyone has anything there.
I mean, you know, I think I'm repeating myself now, right? So it's all about having fun, engaging content,
Right.
increasing the frequency, decreasing the time people spend in it, making it more appealing to their learning style, bringing the learning to the trainer versus pulling them to the learning. You know, two very different concepts of education. And so, you know, there's lots of things companies can do. I've just mentioned a handful. The challenge is, you know, are you in a position where you're ready to do that? You know, and are you on day one providing content and, you know, training to your employees that is required and recommended and is going to be kind of leaned on during their entire tenure? I mean, you know, that's the piece that I think is continuously missing.
For us, we have, you know, a partner is implementing security awareness training. We try and automate the setups as much as possible to make it very easy so that their HR department doesn't feel bogged down with having to get all these initiatives in. We can have it be like, okay, this user's created in Microsoft 365, and it's going to automatically put them in all the right groups. It integrates with all the platforms in the background seamlessly. The users get their training, and it just kickstarts, because we've gone through the time of, you know, learning ourselves and working with our partners to build out best practices and policies. Mm-hmm. So we know what it looks like, and then, you know, we're constantly going through and reevaluating it to make sure it's current and applicable. But having those things, those systems just start so that it's not reliant on a person, because as we talked, you know, people sometimes are both our strongest asset, but can be a weak link. So when we can have those systems just taking care of it for us, I think that's key to make sure that everybody gets the information and the tools they need to be successful.
If I can add to it, when it comes to manufacturers, and I'm sure many other industries, there is already, they do have a required training for any, you know, initial training for any new employees, like safety. So we usually recommend is just add cybersecurity on top of that. Whatever you're already doing, whatever processes you have in place, just add cybersecurity to it. And then I think still is the tools and the regularity and all of that, it's fantastic. But I think that building, having the conversations with your employees, having in-person meetings and discussing cybersecurity, asking them questions, letting your employees to voice their concerns or preferences, or sometimes when you, especially when you implement policies and procedures or best practices, it's very difficult for the management to understand the risks or how it's working, whether it's not working. What is, there's always a residual risk to whatever you implement and the control that you implement. So a lot of times the employees will be able to provide you the knowledge that you may not have as management to what's really going on, what are the situations that may be occurring. So having that conversation, it's not only bringing your attention to some possible security risk that you may not have, allowing you to maybe implement additional training or maybe adjust your policies, improve on things. Cybersecurity is a continuous improvement, as we already said in here, but also it will allow you to build cybersecurity culture within your organization. Your employees will see you up there talking and seeing that you are committed to it, you're taking steps, and that's just increasing the culture of cybersecurity within your organization and the trust.
And so from a solution perspective and the onboarding, I think about solutions not being a one size fits all. We really have to think about what is important to that client, and Charles IT does a great job of doing that. Here's the solution, but how do we make it work for you? What's important to your organization? Is it having SSO in place? Is it having passwordless in place when it comes to that security practice of MFA? But how do we make MFA work for you and your end users, your organization? So I think it's really important to customize not just the security trainings, which are incredibly important, but the solutions as well, to make sure that it's a good long-term fit for the client as well.
Absolutely. And tying that back into the transparency and open communication as well, I think something that I just thought about too is having that feedback loop as well from your employees too. Is, was this enough? Was this not enough? Was this a pain, or what would you like to see differently? And then them actually listening to that feedback and taking those actionable steps will show the employees that they're committed to this and committed to making sure everyone is doing their trainings the correct way, whether it's gamified or in video format, like you said, Joanna. So I think that's a good place to end for us. I do want to dive into this Q&A a little bit. We have a few questions in here. None of them directed to anybody in particular, so I'll open it up to the floor. Whoever wants to take it can absolutely take it. The first one we got here is, how can the effectiveness of security awareness training be measured? You're muted, Joanna.
Sorry, I'll certainly jump. So, if you're looking at, overall security culture and the measurement of that, at KnowBe4, we actually have a survey. We have the security culture survey. So if you're a customer of KnowBe4, then, you have access to this. If not, you can certainly look at it. And, when we're looking at, how you measure, you got to figure, what are those questions that, we need answers to, right? And it's, does my organization care about security? What areas of the business are least and most secure minded? Which employees are most risk averse? Or how strong or weak is our culture? What do we have to do? Right. And so the security culture survey that we have measures the sentiments of your users towards security within your organization. It's the psychological and social aspects that drive social behavior. And specifically, it measures 7 different dimensions, and I spoke of them earlier on in our conversation, right? And so it measures the attitudes, the feelings and beliefs that employees have, the behaviors, that's their actions. The cognition, it's the employee's understanding, the communication, what's the quality of communication across your organization? It's the compliance, like what's the written security policies and do they understand that and abide by those? And it's the norms. What are those unwritten expectations regarding the appropriate behaviors that they're supposed to have? And then lastly, it's, how do they feel they are responsible overall for their role that they play within securing the organization. And so this particular survey allows you, as frequently as you would like to, really kind of get this pulse on your organization to see, whether or not improvements are being made based on the investment of training and testing and communication that you're putting in.
Great. If anyone else has anything to add, feel free. No, all good. All right. We'll move on
I
to
also, I'll say one last thing.
Sure.
When I was at Gartner, I wrote a series of white papers and so forth about how do you measure your security awareness training programs outside of security culture, right? And so I would guide your viewership to go take a look at, those white papers, because there are many, and there's a lot of great detail in there.
Awesome. We'll check it out. Maybe we'll actually, that's what we'll do. We'll send that out in our post-event email to the attendees. Yeah, I'll grab that. Do you mind? Are they up on Gartner's website? Do you want to email it to us?
Yeah, I can send you some too. Yeah, no worries.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah, let's do that. All right. So moving on. Next question. So I lied a little bit. There is an MFA directed question. So we will jump to that. And this is, how user-friendly is MFA? Will it cause a significant change in the user experience?
I think MFA is as user-friendly as the solution that you decide to use. So there's a lot out there. Like I said, if you decide to just protect every application based on like their built-in MFA, so you're using Google Authenticator for Google Workspace, you're using Azure on the Microsoft side, you're using the built-in VPN one, then yeah, it causes a lot of friction for the end user. But when you use MFA in a way that at the forefront you're thinking, how can I protect the most applications, not leaving gaps within my environment, and making it easy for my end user to use. When I MFA, I'm using things like a security key. I'm using things so I don't even have to touch my phone. I'm using things like SSO. I access about 17 to 20 corporate web apps every single day. But I SSO at the top of the day. My administrator, my IT administrator, has it so that the session is remembered for 8 hours. So I'm just doing that MFA at the top of the day. My application is protected and I have a seamless experience. So it's really important to invest into the right security tools and the right IT department as well, like Charles IT, that knows the products, that knows the feature and how to make it work for you so that it is friendly to your end users.
Yeah, and I will say from my experience using MFA throughout my 3 years here at Charles IT, it's been pretty seamless. Hasn't really interrupted me too much. Even if you're offline, I can get online to my computer even if there's no Wi-Fi. So that's a super huge help.
Yeah, we have higher compliance needs, so we get prompted every single login. You get up to go grab a coffee, you come back, your computer's locked, you got to log in with MFA. If that's not your need and you don't want to do that, we can set it up so that it's only on your email. And when that token gets saved locally to your work computer and it's trusted, you're not going to get prompted every single time you open your email, whether it's on your phone or on your workstation. So it can be, it seems daunting because people are used to the way MFA used to be done, but it can be very, very easy. Tap of a button on a watch or a phone, you're in and you're not bugged again for a month.
Right. And then we do have just a minute left. Are you guys all right if we go with one more question? Do you guys have to jump? Anybody? Good for one more. Last one we got here is, for those family businesses in manufacturing, what have you found is the best way to help them understand the importance of cybersecurity, especially at the leadership level? So I think, Anna, that might be a good one for you.
Yes, what I found is that they need to be just make aware of why we're doing that, again, built with strategy and training. When we engage with clients, usually a new client, the first thing we insist on doing is bringing the whole management team together in a room and having a 2-hour conversation presenting the threat landscape, because the threat landscape is quite different specifically to the manufacturer that might be within the DoD supply chain. We talk about the regulations, why we're doing that. All of that brings together to, and I've seen it many times when you have a leadership team when they have lots of questions, they're not sure, and afterwards you just need to make sure that they understand again why the company decide to be compliant with those regulations and what is the benefits of it, and if they don't comply, what might be the negative impact on it, and that's really it's changing the mindset and driving the behaviors. And again, it has to start with the leadership, and that's how, by example, how the whole company is going to move forward with that.
I've also found that real life stories. Charles IT has a lot of clients who are in the manufacturing space. Here are stories of when things went really well and when they didn't. Having that human connection on those things, making it relatable, having the proper metaphors that they understand. This is how we build a house. This is how you build a secure infrastructure, and being able to find those relatable items I found has been very successful.
Great. We hope that helps. I think we're just going to wrap it up right there, right at 1:01. So we want to thank all of the attendees for taking the time out of their day to join us today, especially on this holiday week. We really appreciate that. We appreciate your interest. I want to thank you guys, the speakers, for all being here today, taking the time out of your weeks as well, and all the prep time as well, and what a huge help you guys have been with us putting this on. So we really appreciate that. And then for all the attendees, we do have a post-webinar email that will go out. You'll get a copy of the recording and anything else, the white papers that Joanna was talking about. That's what I was thinking of, sorry. So we'll make sure to get those to you guys so you can read up a little bit more on the security culture. That should go out within the next couple of days sometime. And yeah, we appreciate everyone. Happy holidays. Take care. And thank you again, everybody, for being here.